Gary, let's dive into our price reduction protocol. This is the three-part process or the three-step process that we use to reset seller expectations if we've taken on their listing and there's been no activity or there's been no
Right.
offers.
All right. So, like you said, Chris, this is a three-part process. Part number one is we need to make sure that we educate our sellers about everything that we have done and what's been happening in the marketplace. Now, if you have not been sending your sellers regular updates, like once a week with this
Mm,
happening, then this is going to be a new event for them. And
right.
it's really important that we update our sellers as to what is happening that we have been doing to actively promote their home and
Mm,
what has been happening in the market as a whole. Because here's what I know to be true: when home sellers get disappointed or disgruntled with us as agents, and I ask them, well, why do you think your home didn't sell? They always say it's because my agent didn't do
mm.
anything. We need to make
Well,
sure that we reset that right now.
all right. So ultimately, our goal with part one is to schedule a meeting to reboot expectations. The way in which we're going to do it is we're going to send them some information. So what you're saying is first, we need to show them what we've done so far to promote the home. That's part one, or that's like one component of the
Sure.
information. And then the second thing is we need to show them then the market activity of what's been going on. And so that first part we can accomplish by sending them an updated copy of our property marketing plan. If we have a property marketing plan that we're using to market that home, which is ultimately a checklist of things that we're going to do to market that home, what we can do is, what I can do is I'll just scroll through this specifically to the section in our property marketing plan where we have all the list of activities of what's going to happen, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
It's
what we could
really,
do.
really important to educate them as to everything that we've done so
Mm,
that they are very, very clear that it's not a lack of our marketing efforts
mm.
that has caused their home not to sell.
Right. So important here. We could, add a little column here, a little checklist, or you could just copy and paste this into another document, into
Right.
an email, just showing them the checklist of all the things that we have done since we've launched that listing. So that kind of marks one component. Now, the other part that you said we want to send out, in addition to this information, is the like basically an updated CMA.
That's correct. It's basically an updated CMA, but I start the date of all of the research parameters around the start date of their listing. So anything that
Mm,
has happened with new homes coming on the market, that's new competition, any homes that have gone under contract, or anything that has closed since the start of
mm.
that listing, because basically we've already reviewed everything previous to that date because
Right.
we sat down with them and we reviewed that when we met with them. Now they need to see an update of what is happening in the marketplace and what that means to them.
Right. So you're talking about when you went on the listing appointment to get the listing, you did a CMA, you showed them all the market activity up to that point.
Right.
And so now with this information we're sending now is here's everything that happened since that time.
Right.
And, depending on how long that listing has been on the market, that could be a lot, that could be a little, but it's really good context, market context for the conversation that we're going to have when we sit down with them in a meeting to reboot those expectations. Now, Gary, how would you send this information in part one over? Just drop it in an email and send it over saying, hey, I'd like to schedule time for us to sit down and review this information, something along those lines?
Absolutely. It's going to be very important to send this through email so that they have access to all of this information. And
Mm,
I make two requests. Number one, I request that they review the information. And then the second request is requesting to schedule an appointment. Ideally, this reboot expectations meeting is going to happen in person at their home. If
mm.
that can't happen because of schedules or because they relocated or whatever it may be, then you definitely need to host that online on a Zoom or something like that.
So we're going to schedule that meeting, which leads us to part two of this process, right? So part two, we've got here, we're going to basically revisit the information that we sent over in the email, right? How would you do that? Would you just have the same property marketing plan that's been updated and kind of walk them through it, pull up the CMA, walk them through it, see what kind of questions they have about it?
Well, sure. So what I'm going to start in that part two in that meeting is I'm going to ask them if they had a chance to review our property marketing plan and everything that we've done to market their home, and if they've
Hmm.
had a chance to review the updated market analysis. If they have
Gotcha.
not, I will review it with them. If they have had a chance, I'm going to ask them, great, what any questions or assessments have you come up
Mm.
with since you reviewed that?
This is a good reminder to anybody who's watching this that property marketing plans are really important to have and to use. Oftentimes, when we do training and sessions and videos, we find that less than half of the audience is actually using a property marketing plan to list, market, and sell that home. So it becomes not only a really good resource for you to market the home, it becomes a great communication tool in working with your seller, whether it's at the time of the listing appointment so they understand here's everything that we're going to do, or in this situation, very important because now we can show them everything that we have done. So we get to this place where we're going to review this information, we're going to go through the CMA, and then we're going to get to what we call the 3P dialogue.
Correct.
And I'm actually gonna pull up a slide. We originally addressed the 3Ps. Gary, you talk about the 3Ps, and you have a whole dialogue that you use during your listing presentation that you use. So I'm just gonna pull up your listing presentation and specifically the slide that we use or that you use when you're talking about it. So can you walk us through what the 3P dialogue is?
Sure. Well, so first and foremost, if you're unfamiliar with the 3Ps, what the 3Ps are is they're three factors that affect selling a home.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the 3Ps that affect absolutely selling anything. It's not just about a house, it's about selling anything. So, number one, the first 3P is about preparation. That's the condition of the product. The product in this case is the home. So, what is the condition of the home and what kind of preparation needs to happen to prepare the home so that it sells fast for the highest amount of money? So that's
Now that preparation or condition is definitely relative to the competition in the marketplace at any given time, right? Meaning that, if there could be a pristine home and that's going to be at one price and maybe one that's not. And so it's very relative to what else is on the market at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the preparation, the promotion, and pricing, every single one of these has to do with what's happening in the marketplace and what's happening with your competition. So
Gotcha.
that's the first of the 3Ps. The second P is promotion. That is what we as real estate professionals are going to do to market and promote their home for sale. And the third P is pricing. Price always is critical in selling a house, but it's not always just about price. And this price and the preparation, these are all determined during that first listing appointment and will be rediscussed during this reboot meeting.
Now, Gary, you have a dialogue that you like to
I
use
do.
where there's the old way and the new way, which anyone who's having this conversation, I think that dialogue, regardless of whether you're doing it during the listing appointment or during your reboot meeting, is to use that dialogue because this is all about education, right? We need to make sure that they don't think that the only problem could be promotion. They need to understand the trifecta that has to happen. But you've got this great dialogue that you use. Can you walk us through that dialogue?
Sure, sure. So I would say something like this. So, Chris, are you familiar with the 3Ps of selling a home?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, I'll explain the way things used to be done and then how we've had to change to make them actually effective today. So, in the old days of selling real estate, the old 3Ps were, an agent could put a home in the MLS. We would put a sign in the yard, and then we would pray that the house sells. Now, this works from time to time when the market is super, super hot. There's very few listings and an overabundance of buyers. You can still get away with that when those conditions are happening. However, during normal market conditions, we have to pivot and adjust the 3Ps. We can no longer just put a sign in the yard, put the home in the MLS, and pray that the home sells. Instead, we have to pivot and we have to really inspect what is the preparation or the condition of the home. What is the promotion that we as real estate professionals are actively doing to promote your home to attract the greatest number of home buyers? And then number three, what is our effective pricing strategy that may need to be fluid based on current market conditions and buyer activity? So those are the 3Ps that we're here to discuss today.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is a really good dialogue that you can use to help lay that foundation for it's not just one thing.
It's not just one
just
thing. There's no finger pointing like you didn't do this or they didn't do this or it's all their fault. No, this is very factual that these 3Ps affect any product sale. And so right now, what we need to discuss is your product is your home. And we need to discuss how these three P's are going to be optimized to get you the fastest sell at the highest price.
So at this point in the conversation, you can use those three P's then to diagnose what's going on, right? We can use those three P's to say, well, we've already eliminated the promotion piece, right? Because we walked them through the property marketing plan, and the updates to the property marketing plan. So they know that, hey, we've got the promotion box covered. Now the question is going to be, which of the other two P's? Is it the preparation or the condition of the home? Or do we need to address the pricing of the home, or maybe a blend of both? Maybe curb appeal is the issue, right? Let me ask you this. If you're sitting down and you feel like it's a little bit of preparation, a little bit of pricing, how would you address the preparation or the condition factors?
Sure. So number one is I never make it about what I think about their house. That's really, really important. What we're going to make sure that we do is that we get feedback from any potential home buyers or their real estate agents. Now, if we've been on the market for a while and we're having this reboot conversation, and we've had zero showing, so I have no opportunity to get any feedback, what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule a broker open house to get all of the agents from my brokerage and maybe surrounding brokers to come in and give me feedback that I can then present. So I want to make sure that I'm getting that information from somebody else. Plus, really is the preparation of their home, unless it's the exterior aesthetics. If we've had zero showings, is that really affecting the sale of their home? Probably not, because nobody's even seeing the inside of their house.
Gotcha. So again, you can use this as a diagnosis tool when you look at also the activity that's been going on in the market and specifically for that listing.
Yeah.
Now, if you know the real situation or the real problem to solve is the price, how do you introduce that? How do you cover that with the seller at that time in that meeting?
Well, it's going to be very similar to the initial listing appointment. So I would say that in the conversation, I would say, hey, Chris, when we first met at your home, we reviewed our pricing strategy together, and we reviewed what home buyers are making moves and how much they're paying for similar homes in the market at that time. Well, as you saw from the information I sent you, times have changed, buyer activity has changed, financing has changed, whatever has changed in the marketplace. So now we need to reevaluate our pricing strategy to make sure that we are attracting the greatest number of home buyers and to make sure that your home stays in the market.
Gotcha. And so at this point, then you can come back to the CMA, but focus on the value aspect of the CMA and revisit that information again, saying, here's what's going on, and here's what the range is, and here's what I would recommend for us to price the home at. Actually, by the way, in order to prevent you from getting to this place, a good practice to start doing is a weekly update.
Oh, 100%, Chris. Here's the thing. Sometimes a reboot is required, and it's really required in two different times. Number one, if we have not been updating our sellers at all, and we just kind of ostriched ourselves or buried our heads in the sand waiting for a buyer to show up. So we may need to have a reboot then. The second time a reboot needs to happen is if we have been sending out these updates and the seller is really reluctant to make any changes at that time, we may need to make the assessment. We need to have a reboot conversation because we've got to make a change.
And so we recommend using like a weekly report template and sending that out so that you can then pick up the phone and call them and have something to discuss. We call this the seller update report. You'll see that it says listing activity report. That's the language that we use for the seller. And really it just shows, here's what the marketing actions that have taken place in the last week. Here's feedback from the buyer's agents that we've gotten in the last week and what the stats were, right? How many inquiries, showings, any offers that came in. And then we look at the bottom of this, half of this document, we see that here's, from a market perspective, what's been going on, right? So we got the weekly stats for the house itself, but then we also have what are the weekly stats for the market. Maybe there's some new listings that are hitting the market. Maybe something's going under contract, so on and so forth. And then we look at the marketing actions that we're going to take really it's copying and pasting from that property marketing plan, saying here's either what we're going to do or what is ongoing, and then any suggestions for the preparation, pricing, or promotional strategy at the very bottom of that. So if you have this document that's going out, now it's much easier to pick up the phone and give them an update because you've got something to talk about,
Exactly.
right? Even if there's nothing to talk about in terms of their home, right? Because sometimes that maybe is why we don't regularly reach out to people, is we don't think we have anything to say because we've had no offers, we've had no showings, so we've got nothing really to say there. But that is actually very useful information when you couple it with here's everything that we've done, here's everything that's going on in the market. Maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe there's a disconnect in with either the preparation or the pricing. Now let's assume we're doing this, we've done part 1, part 2, and we're getting to part 3. And what if the seller is just stubborn,
Sure.
right? They don't really want.
This absolutely happens from time to time. Is even presented with the facts, a seller might sit back and say, well, I don't care what it says. I know what my home is worth, and that's what I want. So it's really important to understand what are the consequences of the seller not selling their home, because ultimately, as a real estate professional, if they are unwilling to change the preparation or the condition of their home, and or unwilling to adjust their price strategy to what is happening in current market conditions, that the home is going to just sit there. It's going to have zero showings, and it's going to produce a really disgruntled seller, a dissatisfied seller. And at this point, we need to determine, are they unsatisfiable? Or are they just really emotional and just really need to understand what the consequences of inaction are?
Gotcha. So this is where a script to force them to think through what those consequences are and sit with it for a while can be super helpful. Here's a script that we put together that they could use. You want to read through this and just emphasize the parts in the script where your tone would change, and your pauses, maybe exaggerate your pauses.
Sure.
And we can explain why you're doing that here.
Yeah,
as you go
what
through
we're
it.
doing is we're really we are exacerbating and really emphasizing their pain points around this, and the fact that if the home continues to stay on the market, it's because of their actions or inaction. So it would be something like this. So, Chris, assuming that we make no change and that your home continues to sit on the market, and buyers start to think there's something wrong with your home, and nobody makes an offer, what would you do then?
And this is where you have to sit and say nothing until they respond, right?
You must be very comfortable. As a salesperson, you must be very comfortable to sit in silence.
Because they could take a minute to reflect on this. They might be sitting there for a while, and you could see the gears are turning, and you don't want to feel that silence.
No.
With
I
your
mean,
voice.
ultimately, here's what we're doing. We're poking at their pain points that we already know they have, but we have to poke at them because they have blinders on. They don't want to feel their pain points. They don't, like, maybe they're like so blind to what reality is, and they don't want to feel what that is, that they'll just continue trucking along. But we have to take their blinders off and show them the reality, and then say, this is the reality. What if these things happen? What then? And then you just sit back with like just a blank slate. Do not move. Don't say anything. Just watch them. You will actually, more often than not, get your answer by the pivot in their physical state.
Now, let's say they say something like this. Well, I don't have to sell. We'll just take it off the market.
I would say something like this. I completely understand. Sometimes when selling a house, that is the right thing to do. Because if you are really attached to that sales price that you want from the home, it may be some time before the market catches up to you. And I'm great with that. If that is your decision, is it okay if I stay in touch with you on a monthly basis and continue to provide you with market updates? So when you're ready and the market is ready for your price, we can hit the ground running.
So you'd be suggesting at that point to take the home off the market and relist it at a later point.
Yes, absolutely. And here's why. It's much better to take the home off the market and not waste cycles of our time, the client's emotional attachment to it. I mean, just think about this. Every time they leave the house to go to the grocery store or take the kids to school or go to a doctor's appointment and they come back and they see your for sale sign in the yard, all they're going to think is, why hasn't my house sold? That's all they're going to be thinking. And so let's remove that. Let's remove that pain point. Like, we've already exposed the pain for what it is. We took their blinders off. We made them face their pain. We made them face the consequences of inaction. And now what we're going to do is we're going to help them remove some of that pain and sit back and reflect.
So I think that's pretty powerful. If you think about what you're doing there, is you're making the recommendation to, let's take the home off the market then. If you're set on that price, and I'm going to tell you, based on my professional assessment, it's going to take time for the market to catch up to that. The last thing we want to do is leave it on the market, because you could potentially chase down a price. If people see that the home's been on the market for 24 months, they're going to think something is wrong with it. So I suggest that we take the home off the market now, and I'll stay in touch with you. Yep. That's powerful, because it's kind of like the takeaway concept of like, hey, this is such a big deal, we should just take the home off the market. Yeah, that's really going to make them rethink the situation, right?
But it's also a great opportunity for us to level up our level of trust in their mind. Because if I'm willing to take it off the market and stay in touch with them and continue to offer value, all of a sudden it takes away the blame game of Gary didn't do anything to sell my house. Instead, it's like, oh, Gary's actually looking out for me and what I want, and he's willing to continue staying in touch and providing these market updates. I can trust that Gary has my interests close to heart.
It puts them a little bit on the defense of making a decision, as opposed to being able to blame us for inaction when we know everything that we've just shared with them, all the things that are going on. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, no, if you're not going to make the right decision, let's take it off the market. And that's okay. Like, you're good with that.
Sometimes this is what happens, right? So you're going to have two different outcomes. They'll say, yeah, let's do that. Or this is the power of the takeaway, as you said, Chris, is quite often the power of the takeaway makes them say, oh, he's willing to actually take the home off the market. If I'm unwilling, he really does believe that we can't sell that. Okay, I get it. Let's change our price. Let's do these things. Yes, I want to sell the house. So sometimes it's just stubbornness that makes them get stuck in that thinking. And once we remove their blinders and we provide them a takeaway, all of a sudden they have no more defense. It's gone.
Right. Well, it's powerful, because what you've done is you've put their real need ahead of everything else, which means dealing with uncomfortable conversation, willing to take the home off the market. That's showing them that you literally are looking out for their best interest. There's really nowhere for them to go after that. They can't challenge that, oh, you're just trying to drop the price to get the home sold. You're not doing any of the marketing. It's like, no, this is how firmly I believe in it. And that's one way of walking away from it. They may or may be a client that you want to work with in the future. It's just now's not the right time for them.
That's correct.
And there you have our 3-point price reduction protocol. And if you have any questions about it, let us know in the comments or send us a message.